The Denver Broncos could be without Dre Greenlaw on Sunday's game against the Cowboys after the NFL suspended him. Plus, we need to see more Marvin Mims. We'll break it all down here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, Broncos Country? Welcome into another episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We know it's your team every day. The Broncos could be preparing this week for the Cowboys without Dre Greenlaw in the fold. What does it all mean? We'll go through all of that and more. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined as always by Sayre Bedinger, site expert over there, predominantlyorange.com. Thank you so much to all the everydayers out there in Broncos Country. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen, however you choose to do so, for all your daily Broncos news, content, coverage, analysis, and more. And here's what you're going to get on today's episode of the show. The Broncos could be without Dre Greenlaw here on Sunday. The NFL suspended him for unsportsmanlike conduct toward an official after the game. We'll look at every angle here and what the Broncos' contingency plan may be if Dre does, in fact, lose his appeal in this situation. Plus, the Broncos, the NFL trade deadline is coming up, and the Broncos could be eyeing the guard market. We'll take a look at whether or not they need to do that, and then we'll dive deep into why the offense needs to see a little bit more of Marvin Mims. When Marvin plays more, good things happen. We'll go through all that and more on today's episode, brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Sayre, not the news that we were hoping for on Monday afternoon when the NFL announced that they are suspending Dre Greenlaw 1 game without pay for unsportsmanlike conduct towards an official, something that happened entirely after the Broncos won the game. There's a lot to break down on this, a lot of different angles that we're going to have to tackle here, pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, Dre Greenlaw gets accused of allegedly threatening official Brad Allen, who was the head official, the lead of that crew that was officiating the game against the New York Giants. And obviously he had a bone to pick with him because he was kind of jawing at him. There's video of Dre kind of yelling at him a little bit right after the game-winning kick from Will Lutz. And then Brad Allen kind of gets caught up in the thick of all these Broncos players coming in. And he's sort of like, he sort of shoves Justin Strnad to the side. I mean, you could be the judge and watch some of the video footage that's out there, but after he kind of shoves Justin Strnad to the side to get out of that scrum of Broncos players, it seemed like whatever Greenlaw was saying, then his intensity amplified like tenfold after that point, and he starts running after Brad Allen and shouting things at him. Q Robinson kind of restrains him a little bit, pulls him back to the rest of his team. So, of course, we know football is an emotional game, especially for the players. Tempers maybe running at that point, running hot after the game was over for Greenlaw in particular. And I don't know, Cody, we can only speculate at this point, but certainly with Greenlaw appealing the suspension, you really hope this doesn't break he finally got back out onto the field, and now there's a chance he might be missing again for this game against the Cowboys.
Look, there's so many different ways we can approach this. I think we can all say, the game is emotional 100%. I've been on the sideline as a player, as a coach. I've been part of some things like that. It's an emotional sport. I think more so, and just knowing Dre, knowing Justin, and knowing the guys in that locker room. I mean, and when you watch it in slow motion too, like the thing that you can clearly see is the official kind of shoving Justin, and Justin turns his head. I mean, if you slow it down, Justin turns his head as if he's saying something to him because he just gets shoved by the official. And I don't know if Brad Allen said anything back, but it drew the ire of Dre Greenlaw, which Dre's always going to go after, go support his guys, stick up for his guys. You love that in a teammate here. And at the same time, I think we can also say Dre probably shouldn't have put himself in that situation, right? But the issue I have with this is it is essentially Brad Allen's word against Dre Greenlaw saying that he was threatened, right? If Dre threatened him, well, it's Brad's word against Dre's. I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. And the NFL is one of the many leagues that go above and beyond to protect officials, and they're the ones that get held accountable the least, I think, in the league. Like that was a poorly officiated game, as we talked about. The Giants had 7 first downs off of penalties alone. Terrible calls across the board throughout that game, 110% here. If anything, like I'm hoping that maybe there's something out there that either like gives us real clarity and truth on the situation. Where the cameras are rolling at all times, especially on the field for those post-game celebrations. Remember J.C. Horn chirping at Sean Payton a couple of years ago? Cameras got all that stuff captured. So I'm hoping that something got there, because if Brad Allen is saying that Dre threatened him, then really the NFL is going to believe Brad Allen, and that's why they suspended him. Whereas if there's no audio, it's his word against Dre's. I don't like that. I think it puts the player in an unprecarious situation, and he shouldn't have been in that situation to begin with, but he's defending his guy. I get that. Dre is appealing this, and I'm very curious to see if it gets overturned or if it is upheld. I just think this is just one of those crazy situations. Look, yes, I think you can jaw at guys. And if he's jawing at the official and he's not threatening him, if he didn't threaten him, fine him. Just fine him. I think a suspension is way overblown here by the National Football League, who once again wants to flex their power that they're going to protect officials and never hold officials accountable, and they're going to hold players more accountable at this point. It's frustrating me. It's a little one-sided. There seems to be a double standard.
Yeah, imagine if a Broncos player had pushed aside Brad Allen the way that he did to Justin Sternad. I mean, the vitriol and the reaction about that would be crazy, right? And we've seen now 2 weeks in a row, the NFL is making examples of players after games for the way that they're behaving, right? And last week it was Brian Branch of the Detroit Lions who, got into a bit of a scuffle there with Juju Smith-Schuster. And obviously, I mean, there's justifiable action to be taken depending on what players do in those situations, right? But if you are pitting somebody's word against somebody else's, there's no way that you can uphold a 1-game suspension and a nearly $200,000 game check from a player to say, hey, this is what the official said that you said to him, and so we're taking him at his word and you're out for this game. That's it. I just don't think that's fair of the league to do that. Now, we don't know at the time of recording this exactly what Dre Greenlaw is alleged to have said to Brad Allen. And I think unless video and audio evidence of it surfaces, Cody, I feel like you can't uphold this suspension. I just don't think you can. Now, you're right. Dre should never have put himself in the situation. Go celebrate with your teammates and then vent to the media after the game, because players do that all the time. Pat Surtain was talking about the Riley Moss penalty after the game, and standing up for his guy. You have platforms to do that. Dre Greenlaw understands that as much as anybody. And so I get wanting to stand up for your guys. I get wanting to be there for your teammates. But yeah, don't put yourself in that situation. At the same time, the NFL has got to chill out a little bit here, because Brad Allen did everything that he could. Him and his crew did everything that they could to put the Broncos in bad positions there. Like you mentioned, 7 first downs via the penalty, just a terrible pass interference call on Riley Moss that nearly cost the Broncos the game. Jermaine Illuminor constantly being ignored for his false starts on the right tackle position. I mean, we saw a number of different things in this game. Missed holding on Zach Allen in the final drive for the New York Giants where they scored a touchdown. There's a lot of different things going on in this game where the officiating was so bad, and they're not going to be held accountable for that. And yet, here we go. The Broncos may be missing one of their most important and exciting defensive players for a critical midseason game.
Well, even Sean Payton was pissed at the officiating. I mean, I've never seen Sean run down and go onto the field, and Sean got flagged himself, and Sean's probably going to get fined for that. But once again, I have the issue with suspending a player here. And like, here's the thing, Sayre, I mean, just logic. Like, if someone's running up and threatening me, I may just keep running, right? Like, I'm not going to stop and throw a flag like that. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Like, if someone was threatening me, I'd be trying to get out of the way. I'd be trying to get out of the environment. I wouldn't stop and then kind of move towards him and then throw a flag. Like, what's that going to do? Are you going to put 15 yards on me? I don't understand that. It's just a stupid situation. Should have never happened, unfortunately, here. And now if the Broncos, I mean, they're probably going to enter this week as the time they were sitting down. They're probably going to be preparing as if Dre's not going to play. But I agree with you, Sayre. I think it should be overturned. I think fine him. That's fine. Send out a notice saying it's not okay to talk to officials. Don't go up to officials after the game. Put out a league-wide memo to teams there. I think suspending a player is a little bit over the top here, especially when Dre didn't put his hands on the official, didn't touch the official. He just said words, and we don't know what words were said. And obviously, if Dre said words that were threatening, then okay, then I would agree with the suspension. But We don't officially know that until something actually comes out. If there was actually documented footage captured of what Dre said specifically, it becomes a he said versus he said type of situation. And I would not want to just take the word solely of an NFL official over a player, because the NFL official is highly protected. Broncos Country, make sure you let us know your thoughts here on the Dre Greenlaw situation, your thoughts on whether or not the suspension should be overturned or upheld here. But Sayre and I, we got a lot to talk about still on today's episode of the show. The NFL trade deadline is coming up, and while the Broncos offensive line is banged up at the guard position specifically, Alex Palczewski did a nice job stepping in. But could the Broncos be looking at the market to potentially bring somebody in? We'll debate and discuss that here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. I'm Cody Roark from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com. Today's episode of the show is also brought to you by our friends over there at Mazda. And Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda, they deliver confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anybody else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes, they sweat all the details. Mazda, they bring the same intention to how they craft every model of vehicle. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
The NFL trade deadline is just 2 weeks away, and the Denver Broncos, they could be looking for some help on the interior offensive line. We're going to tell you why the Broncos probably should do a little bit of something there to fortify their front group. But Broncos Country, before we get into that discussion, I want to say thank you to all of you for making us your first listen of the day every single day. We appreciate you so much. If you haven't done so already, hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Cody, Mike Kliss of 9 News, our good buddy over there, he dropped a very interesting post on Tuesday talking about the fact that, man, there's a number of names that could be out there and available for the Denver Broncos if they want to look at trading to upgrade that left guard spot, or maybe just upgrade the depth on the offensive line in general. The situation here is pretty simple, right? The Broncos are down to their 4th option at left guard, Alex Palczewski, who made his first ever NFL start at left guard on Sunday. And I think what we saw, you got something to build on there, honestly. I mean, he played pretty well. So the question now becomes, do you protect yourself in the event of any other injuries on the interior offensive line by going out, spending a day 3 pick in a trade? Or do you kind of just stand pat and see what happens, wait for Ben Powers to come back? I'm interested in your thoughts on this, because right now we're 2 weeks out from the trade deadline, and, you know, the clock's ticking a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting dilemmas that you find yourself in, right? Because Palczewski was primarily viewed as that eligible offensive tackle. The extra guy reporting is eligible. The Broncos primarily, Sean Payton said in the offseason, they view Palko as a right side guy. But because of these injuries, you lose Matt Parrott, you lose Ben Powers, you lose your 2 deep right there. You lose Nick Gargiulo in the preseason. You lose your 3 deep essentially there. Now you're in a position where you have to move a guy to a spot where he's never really played. But, you know, Garrett Bowles had said he's going to do whatever he can to help out Palko in that situation. I agree with you. I thought he played well from a communication standpoint, working inside out. I liked what we saw from him in this game against the Giants. Now, I mean, this is his first game starting there. So I imagine you didn't get to see everything that you wanted to necessarily from the Broncos offense from a blocking standpoint. Though I will say that Bo Nix touchdown run off the left side, Palko did a great job of stepping down and replacing Garrett Bull's block because Garrett is pulling, and they faked the flow obviously to the right side so Bo could get out to the left. I just thought that Denver and Palko, they show that wherewithal there where it's nothing but effort and energy. I like that. But in the event, Sayre, like knock on wood, hopefully this does not happen. You can't suffer another injury at that position. You can't suffer that injury to Palko. I mean, if they did, they'd go to Calvin Throckmorton, which would be their fifth guard essentially at that point here. My question here, and this is the dilemma, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this. If an injury were to happen, do you trade for a guy now within the next 2 weeks before the deadline as a backup option, or do you trade for a guy that's a starter so that you could just plug and place that guy there at left guard? And keep in mind, you're bringing in someone new who has to learn the playbook, who doesn't know this playbook just yet. Are the pros outweighing the cons in a situation like this, in your opinion? I'm curious.
That's the toughest part of making trades. That's why the NFL trade deadline is typically the most anticlimactic event in sports, right? Because there's so much that you have to digest when you get traded from one team to another. It's not like in basketball or baseball where, hey, you can just kind of go out there and do your thing. You have to learn an entire playbook, and that is very difficult for guys. So I would imagine, Cody, that if a deal was to be made, you would have to think that it would come sooner rather than later, because the later the Broncos wait, the closer they are to Ben Powers coming back, the more opportunities you give to Alex Palczewski to play in that slot. I do think it's worth a late round flyer to bring somebody in who has starting abilities and maybe even is somebody that you do envision as a starter there over Palczewski and put him back in that reporting eligible slot. That wouldn't be the worst idea at this point, just because, man, you are one more injury away from being in, Calvin Throckmorton playing. And there's a reason why the Broncos are playing Matt Peart and, now Alex Palczewski over Calvin Throckmorton. And he does have plenty of experience, in this offense. And he's been on the practice squad for a couple of years now. So there's a reason why these other guys are playing ahead of him. What happens if Quinn Miners gets hurt God forbid. This is where the Broncos are in a tough spot too, because the Mike McGlinchey, he went down against the New York Giants on Sunday as well. And Palczewski's already playing left guard. So You're now looking at a situation of like this, okay, we're really having to rearrange and reshuffle stuff. It's more than just like doing feng shui in the living room. At this point, it's like, hey, we've lost a bunch of pieces of furniture here, and we're having to actually sit on lawn chairs at this point. So that's where I'm at with it, is like, you can't invite guests over and have lawn chairs in the living room, right? You want a fully furnished living room for everybody to hang out in. I feel like that's where the Broncos are at right now in terms of kind of needing to make a trade.
Well, and to your point about Mike McGlinchey, we saw him get banged up a little bit. I know Frank Crum stepped in there because they couldn't really move Palko from left guard to right tackle in that situation, because then they'd be at a deficiency there. My question is, Palko is viewed as the top backup here to Mike. If Mike, obviously practice hasn't happened yet this week, but he was hobbled a little bit. He finished the game tough as nails, but something obviously worth monitoring here for him. What happens in that situation? Do you just rely on Frank Crum as the next backup here to Mike McGlinchey while Palko's here? God forbid, as you mentioned, the whole situation with Quinn Miners. Or do you look around other NFL teams' practice squads? I think maybe we should do a deep dive here. Is that more of an option for the Broncos right now to poach a veteran guy from someone's practice squad at this point? And also keep in mind, too, Denver just recently had former friend Cam Fleming in for a workout and tryout just last week. So that's something they could also circle back to, where he could play that left guard spot too, if need be. So I'm very curious to see Denver's approach here. I don't know, Sayre. I mean, it also goes against what we've seen the Broncos do here historically under Sean Payton, right? Even in a year where they were struggling, they were 1-5 at one point. They were like, all right, the Broncos just need to be sellers. The Broncos haven't been sellers or buyers. Any trades that they have made have really come in the offseason, essentially. We haven't seen them make these in-season trades. So for me, I'm very curious to see, do they stick with the status quo as to how they're operating with their developmental program with this roster? Do they go out and they poach someone from another practice squad? Or do they say, you know what, this is what we have right now, we got to stick with it? I don't know. I just don't see Sean and George wanting to part ways with capital right now for a problem that obviously will impact you immediately, but you're going to get Ben Powers back here in 2 months. And you have some guys that have been on your roster since training camp that you could throw into the fire a little bit. I don't know. This is a tough one. I don't think the Broncos trade for anybody at this point. And, wasn't there a Saints offensive lineman that just went down with a pretty big injury that was potentially rumored to be on the block?
I think it was. I don't remember seeing who it was, but I think it was the center. I can't remember.
Was it McCoy?
It was either McCoy or Ruiz. I don't know who plays that. Sorry, I don't know. We'll
have to check with our good friend Ross Jackson over there, Locked On Saints. But I saw something like that, and they're like, "Oh, this takes a potential option for the Broncos off the board." But I just don't think that they're going to trade for anybody. I just can't see them parting ways with draft capital here. But Broncos Country, let us know your thoughts. Should the Broncos look at the trade market here for bringing in a guard as a contingency plan here for this offensive line as the offense looks to figure out what their identity is and looks to find some consistency in a very crucial stretch that's coming up for them? Make sure you let us know here on today's episode of the show. But coming up next, Sayre and I are going to tell you why Marvin Mims needs to play more here for the Broncos offense. And if he does, we know that great things are going to happen. Today's Locked On Broncos is brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And Week 8 of the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss out on here, because right now new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, place down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets that you can use all throughout the entire app, from anytime touchdown scores, parlays, you name it, spreads, money lines. FanDuel, they have it all. And the Denver Broncos this week at home against the Dallas Cowboys, they are 3.5-point favorites. That's a different line than what they had last week, as 7.5-point favorites against the New York Giants. That means that this matchup is going to be a lot tougher here for this Broncos team. But if you place $5 as a new customer on the Broncos money line and they win, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all throughout the entire app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Marvin Mims has emerged as one of the clutchest players on this Denver Broncos offensive side of the ball. We saw that last year, and certainly in Sunday's game against the Giants, we saw that come to fruition here. And maybe a little bit more Marvin Mims could mean some good things here for the Broncos offense. We'll go through the numbers. We'll go through what we've seen on tape and more here on today's episode of the show. I want to say thank you once again to the everydayers and first listeners out there in Broncos country. Thanks for tuning in and making us part of your day, however you choose to do so. Sayre, Marvin Mims on Sunday against the Giants played 50% of the snaps. This is an obviously larger increase than what we have seen from him over the course of time throughout his Broncos career. And he came up big in big-time moments. The catch that he had, I'll even mention the one down the right sideline on 3rd and 11. That was such a big catch there. Body adjustment, coming up and making a tough catch despite going against a corner that was a little bit taller than him at that standpoint. And then you talk about the Broncos running that dagger concept with no timeouts left, and Marvin, the ball just hits him perfectly from Bo Nix, and that set up, obviously, the Broncos game winner, because the next play they ran that wheel with Cortland Sutton. Bang, Will Lutz kicks the game winner. This Broncos win would not have been possible without the contributions of Marvin Mims in this game, the 2 clutch catches that he certainly had.
98 yards from scrimmage here in this game from Marvin Mims, 14 yards per touch in this game, which is very exciting. And obviously we know what he brings to the table as a return specialist, although I would say this year it feels more like he's struggling a bit more on the punt return side of things. Maybe teams are kind of defending it differently, but his average is down to 12.3 yards per return, which is still pretty solid, but it was 15.7 last year, 16.4 the year before that. So, and we'll see if he can break free on one of those plays. Then we're really talking about somebody who's changing the games for the Denver Broncos here. But yeah, I agree. Marvin Mims, he even playing a career high in terms of snap count percentage at 43% this year, it still feels like his involvement has been relatively minimal, or at least inconsistent at best. I mean, when we see him getting more looks, what we're seeing is he's making more plays. And so I think that everybody's kind of sitting here wondering the same thing that we've wondered all 3 years of his career now in the NFL. Why is Marvin Mims not getting more looks? I think he has the best hands on the team. I think he's made some of the most clutch plays on the team over the course of the last 3 seasons. And he's the most dynamic player this team has in space with the ball in his hands. So when you factor in those three things, I'm confused, Cody. I don't understand why he's averaging less than 4 touches per game so far. Yeah, he is. I mean,
Yeah.
26 touches through 7 games this season, 31 targets in 7 games. So he's barely averaging 4 targets per game. He's averaging less than 4 touches per game. And I just don't understand that. I don't get it. I don't understand throwing all these different personnel groupings out there when you have a guy who's proven when the ball comes his way, he's going to make plays for you.
Yeah, no, and look, to your point on the punt return game here, it's frustrating for Marvin because the jammers that the Broncos have simply aren't doing a good enough job of blocking the gunners. I mean, that's one thing I'm watching, as the course of the game is unfolding here. When Marvin's back to punt, my eyes strictly go first and foremost to the jammers, which Jahdae Barron, JL Skinner, they have some other guys that come in. Sometimes they'll double a gunner down there. But what we're seeing is these gunners, they're getting the free track up the field. And now it's like the jammers in trail technique at this point has to get on the hip to try to push him out of the way. Marvin's fielding it, but he's got nowhere to go because first thing he's got to avoid is the gunner. So I don't think the Broncos have been good enough in terms of they're setting up the coverage unit here so Marvin can get upfield and make a play. That's taken a step back so far this season, and that's not on Marvin, in my opinion. So that's something that Darren Rizzi is going to obviously have to figure out. But, I agree with you here on this standpoint. Like, we've seen Marvin get used in the backfield, and the Broncos catch defenses going man-to-man coverage. You get him matched up against an inside linebacker, and what is he going to do? He's going to catch a pass, and he's going to get a first down for you here. And then we see him in that situation where he caught that back shoulder on that 3rd and 11 down the right sideline. Sayre, Courtland Sutton was not on the field on that play. So he's coming up on 3rd and 11 in a big time clutch situation. You need a big play. Usually you're thinking Courtland, well, you go one-on-one, you get Marvin there. I love how Marvin is becoming this very, very important piece to this offense. And I think the fact that he doesn't have enough touches, I think is a little bit of a travesty because this is a guy you can keep on the field. And part of me is thinking this as well, Sayre. I understand Sean Payton's rotation of personnel. There is a place for it. But there are situations, I think, that weren't having your best players on the field. I think Marvin is one of the best players on the offensive side of the ball. He simply needs to play a lot more here. I don't think you should sacrifice taking him off because he can be more than just this gadget guy, as we've seen. He can be a guy you throw a deep ball to. You could throw the back shoulder. You could throw into, up the vertical seam right there when a defense is trying to prevent everything, throw it right over the linebacker in between the safety and Marvin. He's got good focus there where he's going to haul it in. I want to see more of that here from this offense. And I think Marvin should get more snaps here alongside Courtland Sutton going forward. I don't think that at this point we can ignore how valuable he is to the success of this team.
Right now, he's averaging less than 40 total yards from scrimmage per game. And I don't believe that is a Marvin Mims problem. I think that is an involvement problem. So this is a guy that, in my opinion, Cody, he should be getting a minimum of, 5-6 targets in the passing game and, at least 2 or 3 attempts out of the backfield, or however you want to slice it, a minimum of 7 or 8 touches per game, just to see what he can do. Because shoot, with the way that he's produced, historically speaking, what we're talking about is if you get this guy 7 or 8 touches a game, if you give him those opportunities, good things are happening for your offense. And so this goes back to our discussion on the Bonus Monday episode that we did about just really leaning into the things that you're actually good at offensively and the players who are actually making plays for you. I understand we want to get Troy Franklin going because when he's at his best, the offense is at another level. But at the same time, if you keep going back to that well and it's not working, that's where you're at fault as an offensive play caller and the person who's deciding what personnel is on the field. Marvin Mims is not dropping the passes that are coming his direction. He almost made an incredible play on that deep ball down the middle of the field that Bo Nix threw him the ball, and it was right there where only Marvin could catch it, but a great play by the Giants defensive back ultimately prevented a stellar one-handed catch. But even the plays that are almost happening for Marvin Mims seem to be better than when the Broncos are targeting guys like Troy Franklin, or especially Trent Sherfield, whose preseason performance now feels like a distant memory by comparison. And Sherfield is not blocking when he's on the field well. He's just not. And so that's one of the things that he was supposed to do well for this team, was set up guys like Marvin Mims with his blocking. So if that's not happening, it's time to make fetch happen with Marvin Mims. Get him the ball 7 or 8 times every single game, no matter what. That's the type of stuff that I would like to see from Sean Payton. That's the hill that I want to see him die on.
In my opinion, I think that your primary 4 wide receivers that should be on the field should be Cortland, Marvin, Troy, and obviously Pat Bryant at this point. Sean Payton alluded to it as well earlier this week, that some guys, and look, the Broncos sometimes on the perimeter, at least in this Giants game, did not do a consistent enough job of blocking. The tight ends missed some blocks on a screenplay to RJ Harvey here. You got wide receivers whiffing. Trent Sherfield's been called for several penalties so far this year. I want to see a lineup where we see Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims, and Cortland Sutton on the field at the same time. I think you can run a lot of interesting things that we've seen Sean do from a play scheming standpoint. We saw last year. Get that in the mix here for the Broncos, I think, a little bit more this season. And better things will happen for this team when we talk about the flow and the consistency of this offense. I think less is more, and getting your key playmakers on the field more is going to produce, I think, better results here going forward. And that's something that I would like to see Sean Payton do, but we'll see if he can do just that here. Broncos Country, that'll wrap up today's episode of the show. Sayre and I will be back tomorrow as we take a little bit of an early preview of the Broncos-Cowboys matchup. We'll look at the tail of the tape. How does the Broncos offense stack up against the Cowboys defense? How does Denver's defense stack up against the Cowboys offense? And some of the key storylines we're going to follow. Plus, hopefully an update on Dre Greenlaw. You get all that and more on tomorrow's episode, Locked On Broncos. We'll see you then.